This is what everyone's been waiting for. Who are Aston Villa going to sign in January?
Yeah, so we reported last month. I think coming into the month, it was pretty clear what Villa were trying to do. So they wanted a versatile attacker that could play in multiple positions across the front line. Daniel Marlin obviously looks the guy that would fulfill that. And looking at his track record, he can play obviously on the right as a 10 up front, and on the left, so that's perfect. Obviously, PSR annoyingly still a big factor, so that's why hence a delay in negotiations. I'll come into an agreement because Villa have got a price that they want to pay and they don't want to cross, and Dortmund have got that, so it's just bargaining at the moment. And of course that his future and bringing him in will impact Philogene will be allowed to go, etc. if Marlon comes in, similar to Kosan Dalkovic and a right back Oscar Mingueza, for example. The stories came out in Spain on Sunday night, I think, and we did a piece on Monday. And although it is accurate that Villa do like him, he's one of 3 to 4 targets that Villa are looking at right back. They really like his versatility, like Martin mentioned. They pointed that out in terms of he can play right back, centre back, and left back, which I found quite interesting. And like you say, he's got really good attacking numbers. And in Spain as well, Monchi obviously has got a lot of ears. He got his ear to the ground there, so I think that was something that could be done. But at the same time, Barcelona have a percentage or some rights to the player as well, which means that Celta Vigo want to probably ask for more money, and of course PSR is always at the back of the mind. So there's a bit of wheeling and dealing going on. I think the Jalen Philogene thing is probably a case in point, because ideally they would have liked to let him go, be it loan or permanent. Emery still really likes him, but at the same time, I'm thinking we maybe need a bit of wiggle room this month, but also in the summer as well.
Yeah, and is it a case of like? Because I remember I've spoken to Tom Colomasi, who's been on the pod quite a few times, friend of the show, and he's a lot of times said that it's sometimes not necessarily about like spending the money. Like they could spend the money. It just means that you'd have to kind of sell more players, or it would be more of a risk then to get back in line with PSR later on down the line when the accounts come through. So technically Villa could spend 40, 50, 60 million in January, but it would just put the pressure on more later on down the line.
Yeah, one of the Villa staff explained it as like a ticking time bomb in terms of, they could do it now, but you've still got to meet that PSR threshold come June 30. And what also, and I must admit, I'm not too well versed in this in terms of UEFA squads and having a certain amount of homegrown players. And if Jadon Philogene goes, who are you going to bring in? And that, for example, an alternative to that and a solution could be you allow Joe Gauchi to go on loan, and then you bring Villa Academy graduate as the third choice keeper, and that's where you fulfill the criteria compensating for Jadon Philogene. So yeah, it's a good example of Villa can sign players, they can sell players, but there seems to be a few quite boring knock-on effects that are basically disrupting everything at the moment.
Yeah, it is a frustrating one. Kev, I mean, are you excited for the potential of like a Daniel Marlin or a Mingueza or one or two others? I hope like that right back position that definitely does need improvement. But yeah, are you excited to see what we can maybe do?
I'm really excited. I think we need a little bit of impetus into the team now. Obviously, I know we made a few signings in the summer, but really of those signings, who's really made an impact? Onana started well. Certainly, obviously he had an injury and maybe lost a little bit of form, but it certainly started off pretty well. Matsson's had his moments, and look, we're all big fans of Ian Maatsen and think he's a great player, but hasn't displaced Dini yet in the team. Philogene, hasn't worked out. You've got to see obviously the two lads we got in the deal with Douglas Luiz. Well, neither of them are here, so obviously that didn't work out. Lewis Dobbin wasn't a particularly good one. I know a lot of this is happening for reasons of PSR, but as a team, you want to kick on from that fourth finish. You would have thought maybe you'd have a couple of players in that squad now where we're actually making an impact in the first team a bit more consistently. And that's why I think we've been hurt, because then you get a couple of players like at times McGinn's obviously form's dropped. Watkins, Bailey, clearly form hasn't been there. Cons has maybe not been the quite the same. I know he's been shifted to right back, albeit, but not quite the same level. Torres has probably dropped off a little bit. It's only probably really, even Martinez has dropped off a little bit. He's admitted that himself. It's probably only really been Dean yet, and then Kamara since his return that you could say, and Tielemans as well. And obviously Morgan Rogers goes without saying.
Well, we said that probably Ross Barkley has been the best signing.
Yeah.
Best
Absolutely.
player out of the new signings in terms of consistency, impact, goals.
Yeah, and to be a bit part player, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I obviously didn't mention Barkley, but as you know, I'm a huge fan of. I think he's an absolute quality footballer. I think it's a steal for the price at the age he's got, the experience he's got. So I think you want a bit of impetus, but you don't want impetus for impetus' sake. You don't bring someone in, and I don't know too much about the right back. I'll take Munchie's black book's notes on whatever he thinks for who he gets in that position. In terms of Marlon, I've not seen too much of him. I hear loads of mixed reports, but you get mixed reports about a lot of players. I've just got to trust the club and their decision-making process. And if he's got that versatility that Jacob obviously alluded to there, that's really important, because I think if you look at attacking positions now for our team, Jacob mentioned the transition and the differences this season, but we're not taking our chances. And, as you said, Rich, you've got to score 3 goals to win a game. So you want an attacker that can come in there. And that's the one thing about Diaby. Diaby was a bit hot and cold last season, but he was on the front foot, wasn't he? And he did create stuff out of nothing. And we have looked a bit toothless, because you look at it and think Bailey's not really been at it. I know he obviously got a goal the weekend, but he's not done really much this season at all. Philogene, albeit from a great wing-back performance against Bayern, hasn't done anything. Rogers, he's so exhausted by the time he runs 100 yards that, meters in new language, sorry, that he, sometimes his end product isn't there, but of course he's been great, and Watkins hasn't, and it's been Duran scoring worldies that's kind of kept us where we are. So I would love to see. Do you know what I'm still gutted about? Joe Felix. I'm still gutted about it, because I know it was rumoured and whether it's going to happen, but he's languishing on the bench at Chelsea. I think he could have been that sort of, that answer to unlocking the key in some scenarios, but I don't know enough about these two players really and who comes in, but I just have to trust the club, don't I?
Yeah. That's it. And I did mention about Marlon, I think it's probably a benefit on 2 or 3 different angles. Like you've got someone who's probably not having the best time at Dortmund, that's maybe getting a bit of criticism, that maybe wants a fresh start, a different coach, different voice. Emery maybe sees something in him. The way that he plays, like that direct kind of that direct, quick, pacey style can suit what we need. Then it's like, okay, what does that do to Leon Bailey? That pushes him on, because we know how he played when Moussa Diaby was there. Obviously, there's a link with Maatsen as well. And also, like, that also gives you like 5, even if he plays well for 5, 6, 7, 8 games, when a player wants to come in and make an impact, that can give Villa that bit of springboard for January to kind of push on. Yeah. And then you're into March and April, and already you've maybe won 6 out of 8 or whatever, and you're back in the race for Champions League. So I think it's kind of one of those that might just be timing and might just work, even if he's not, particularly sort of a bit underwhelming for various fans, or getting some criticism from Dortmund fans. But we'll have to wait and see. I mentioned younger players, Jacob. Like, obviously, people have mentioned Louis Barry, Ben Broggio. People talk about Caden Young as well. What is the deal with Louis Barry? Because someone mentioned about him obviously playing on loan at Stockport. Then, if he does play for Villa, then he can't really go and play on loan for another club, because it's three teams in the same season. So, what does it look like for someone like him and the other younger players in the background?
Rory Wilson as well.
Yeah.
With Rory Wilson first, I think it's kind of come to the end with him at Aston Villa. I think tensions are quite frosty there. He's obviously turned down several contract offers. And what he was asking, or his camp were asking, was in line with Morgan Rogers and John Duran's first contracts. So that gives you an idea. He's got a lot of interest overseas, and obviously he can sign a pre-contract now. The issue is that he's got an ankle injury at the moment. He's seeking outside external help with that rehab. So I think that might be a move might be put on the back burner until the summer. In terms of Louis Barry, I think it'd probably be a loan or permanent. I think permanent would help with obviously PSR and everything like that. But if it's a loan as well, you could have a 6-month loan in the Championship. If he still does well, then his price will go up even more in the summer. So I do think his future is away from Aston Villa. And then you've got Brojo, who's a very, very good talent, but he's very young. He's still growing physically. So I think he's obviously younger, but he's slightly behind everyone else in terms of going out on loan. He's got a little back injury at the moment as well, so that might put pay to a potential loan. But you want to keep him for the youth league as well, where he's been fantastic and is a real key cog in that side. But there's a lot of really good young players coming through. You know, Patterson keeps getting mentioned. Leon Ruth, Aidan Borland. These are guys that occasionally do step up to train with the first team. Have played. In the case of Borland against Wickham in the Carabao Cup as well. And these guys that you probably keep an eye out for in the next 12 to 18 months.